Yes, here we are, Paul. Talking about the reconstruction work we did together and alone of Dore Hoyer's dances. And you suggested before that we first talk about how each of us met Dore Hoyer's work, or how we, maybe you start with your story and then we get to the connection.
Yeah, because for me it means how I met you too. So it's kind of thanks to Dore Hoyer. Thanks, Dore Hoyer, for letting me meet Martin. But yeah, I could say I met Dore Hoyer, or first time I saw her was on video, of course. I was in São Paulo at the university. I was doing a master's program there that I quit, actually. And during one seminar, this teacher showed many videos of German dance. And there was this video of Dore Hoyer that I don't know why really struck me. And I felt that someday I should do this. And I also felt that I could do it. I don't know how, because I didn't really dance at the time. But I felt I could, it would be possible somehow. But it felt so difficult being in Brazil to contact these dancers that I didn't really think about it at the time. And then, like 1 year after, I joined the master's program in Montpellier, Exerce. And totally by chance, the theme of the first year was like reconstruction or working with archival dances. And then that's when in one of the workshops, I decided to start learning Angst, so fear. And totally by chance, you were there at the CCN de Montpellier, but to do something else. It was also on Dore Hoyer, I remember, but for teachers, dance teachers. So it was this coincidence of starting to learn the first dance, meeting you, and yeah, and then from then on, I felt I should continue and learn the other ones, and then we started working. Maybe we'll tell the rest of the story, but that's what happened. It was a lot of coincidences.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, my story is very similar, just different contexts. But now that you talked about uh, our meeting, I'm just reminded of it also because it was Olga de Soto who had invited me to give a talk about Dore Hoyer and reconstruction work for dance teachers. And then you were there, and afterwards you addressed me, and I was really this quirky person that kind of like was interested but was not really a dancer, but was a dancer. I mean, not a dance, like formal dance trained dancer. Um, and I really liked the request and the curiosity and the energy. And it was also for me the first time that I was approached in that role of, someone who passes on the dancers in one way or another, by someone who I consider professional or an artist. Before I did it in educational contexts. So I was also a bit flattered and curious myself what that would mean, to work with someone who has a curiosity and a desire of their own rather than as part of the dance education that they're in, which I had done before. So yeah, that was really, really interesting and nice for me. Also, it met my desire to pass these dances on in an artistically interesting context, let's say, or in a way that it's a dialogue rather than me just teaching, which is also dialogue, but you know what I mean, like someone who also comes with answers or surprises in their own research. And yeah, so that meeting then became like a kind of a very loose collaboration between you and me.
I mean, it was connected to the very concrete also fact that if I wanted to work with these dancers, I kind of had to work with you or Susanne Linke to then address the TanzArchiv in Köln and then ask for the rights, the copyrights to be able to perform them. And it was, yeah, it was interesting how actually then the times we met were also connected to learning a new dance. And then I remember you saying like, no, we have to have a strategy to do this and not ask all the rights at the same time. Let's ask one or two. Then some months after, we ask for another one. And yeah, so there was this relationship to the archive that was also a big thing, very important, which makes me think of what we said the other day about the relationships, how relationships are part of any work with archives. And these days I was thinking about other encounters actually during the process, and how much even the encounters with the studios, it's because I'm in a studio now. I really remember the times we work in different studios and which dance in each studio. So kind of, yeah, I love was Ufer Studios, and then there was this I think it was Begede was at the French Institute in Berlin, and it's really connected to this. I hadn't realized. I'm thinking about it now, how much they're,
Ah, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Now that it's great. You have a much better memory of the process. I guess, you were in it and it was kind of, but now that you call out these places, I remember also. And it's really curious how memory is connected to places. I was wondering, why
But you
did
didn't
you
tell
choose
your
me?
story.
Sorry?
You didn't tell your story of meeting
Oh, my
Dore.
story. Yes.
Yeah.
So I also in my dance training, we had a class called Beginnings of Dance or Dance Histories, or like things that intrigued us personally. And there was a colleague of mine who showed Dore Hoyer the book of Dore Hoyer, and I got very intrigued, but then I forgot about it. Um,
Mm.
and much later, I stumbled over a VHS tape, videotape. In Brussels, and we watched it with the people who we worked together with, and then we got interested, and one thing led to another. Um, Me also having to call the TanzArchiv in Cologne, and then having to call Waltraud Luley, who's this old lady, or was an old lady at the time. Um, she doesn't live anymore, but she was 85 at the time.
Wow.
And the first phone conversation also, like, these things are imprinted in my memory, like your meetings with me or the other things that you did around the dances. She asked me things like how tall, how heavy I was, and if I was a dynamic dancer and stuff like this. It was very awkward in the beginning, but then over time we became friends, which was very beautiful in this whole process. And I also felt, I mean, you and I, we are not close friends, but I felt very much like at least how do you call this, a complicity, and a kind of, yeah, a very friendly relationship somehow. And somehow I feel like that if you have a vehicle like these kinds of dances, it doesn't have to be these particular Afectos Humanos dances, but something that deals so much with being a human being that when you work together on this, it somehow brings you together on some level. And for sure that happened with Waltraud Luley and me. And then, it was a long process until she asked me and Susanne Linke to become the guardians of these dances once she would die. And that was actually the question that I wanted to ask you when you asked me for my beginnings, is how did you choose me over Susanne Linke?
Um, I think I didn't know when I met you. I didn't know anything about these dances or very little. I just knew that you worked on them, you were there, and then I think you told me when we had this dinner. I think we had dinner together. I remember also the restaurant. We had dinner together when we talked, and I think then you told me that both of you were like the guardians of the dances. I think it was just obvious, also maybe because of, I mean, the kind of work that you do, the kind of work that you did with the dances was much more related to the dialogue I wanted to have with the dancers, and not, I was sure I didn't want to do a reconstruction, like a historical, or to search any kind of truth in that. So yeah, it was very obvious, and yeah, it's kind of also I feel there's like kind of two lineages or something like this. Like there's the kind of reconstruction that was like people that ask Susanna Linke, it looks very different from what I did, and that I feel much closer to what you did than much, yeah. And then I find it interesting because I think I don't know, I don't think I know that probably Susanna Linke does not agree at all with the way I dance these dances, but I think that's good to have diversity and to have different points of view on the same dances. It's there's I remember that in the beginning there was this text from Andrea Lepecki that was very, very, very important to me. That talks about you. It's one of the works that he analyzes. It's very interesting. And this thing that he talks about the call of the archive, that there's this call that you don't know why, you feel like you have to do it. And so this was something that was very strong, and I'm still understanding why the hell am I dancing these dances? Because I have no connection to this education, to this history. It's not my country, it's not my culture. And the other thing, what I lost it. I was gonna say something else about Lepecki. It's gonna come back. It's gonna come back later. I know. It's that that you actualize like the fact that when you do reconstruction, you are probably actualizing things that even the author did not think of, and how the work you can detach it from the author, and you can give always new. I mean, when this dance is, I think, as strong as these dances, it's very interesting to think that I think today, 2023, because I still dance them, and I was just rehearsing them now before this call. It's, yeah, to imagine that other things can appear and emerge through these dances today that Dore Hoyer could have never imagined. And this really is an important, very important part for me of working with these dances.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is where we met. That was my interest or desire also to reveal new aspects of these dances, but also of my own dancing through that meeting. I understood it also as a meeting between me, my body, and these dances. And through these dances, Dore Hoyer's body was conveyed, her attitudes, her values, her desires and stuff. And yeah, I guess indeed that this is one of the differences between my approach and Susanne Linke's approach. Susanne Linke has seen Dore Hoyer live. Maybe she even took classes with her. So there's a memory attached that is emotionally charged, I think. This is when I hear Susanne Linke talk about these dances. She also has an artistic distance. I mean, it's very clear, and she understands that also. This is not the question. It's just that memory that is so emotionally charged leads to a sense or an attitude where it seems to me that Susanne Linke tries to answer, not to a call of an archive, but to answer to Dore Hoyer's authenticity in a way. Like, this is very rough, like it's really speaking my mind a bit, improvising around this idea, but I think this is the main difference. So there is a bit more freedom by not having seen Dore Hoyer, let's say. And yeah, what I also mentioned already in another talk that we had, that I realized afterwards we did the black and white movie by having gray costume and a white stage. So there's many layers, also intermediate layers that come into this whole memory work. And one of which I find particularly interesting is the whole gender question, because already when I did it, I was the first man who did it. I kind of actualized or revealed that part of Dore Hoyer's interest in these dances being non-gender, not gendered. And I was intrigued because when we met, you were not quite in transition, but kind of in transition. I don't know, not yet. Okay. And then during the process, you were, I don't know, I don't remember exactly when, or was it afterwards?
It was after,
It
yeah.
was afterwards, you see. But then when I saw it for the first time live, you were in transition in Berlin.
Maybe, but there was this, when you saw it in Berlin, yes, yes, yeah, probably, yes.
And
Because
when I
this was the
saw,
whole question, yeah.
yeah, and when I saw it, for me, that was really, at least on this question of gender, it's like, wow.
Mm.
Especially when you put on the beard, I thought, wow, I could have never taken it that far, that question. But it was like a completely new aspect that became part of the art, let's say, part of the dances, which I was very moved by that actually when I saw it. That
Mm.
particular moment also when you put on the beard.
Yeah, which is your beard, but nobody nobody needs to know. But yeah, I mean, of course it comes from this. It comes a lot from our talks too, because I don't know why. I remember the first time I danced Angst, I don't know why. I remember I put a mustache or something. I don't know why. But I felt there was something with these dances that there was something that was somehow questioning gender, and also on this thing that she would hide her hair, and then every time I would talk to people at the archive or Susanne Linke, everybody would say like she was a very masculine woman and always talking about this gender thing, and that was very, very intriguing for me. And I remember that then when I Liebe, love, was the only dance that I did not learn from the video before. I remember I decided to learn it entirely from you, which then became a joke in the piece, one of the two pieces I did on these dances, because I said like you taught me to make love, how to make love. And, and I remember that one day, I remember I bought two t-shirts and then I asked you to wear one of them and I put the beard on and we just worked together like we did the other days, but I was Martin Nachbar. And I remember you were like very intrigued by this. And this is also one of the reasons why it stayed as a drag king technology in the piece. But it was really from this understanding for me that it was not just Dore Hoyer's dances, it was Martin's, Dore Hoyer's, Waltraud Luley's dances. And this was very, yeah. I mean, it's still the case, although more and more with time, I feel, and it's very interesting how I also have things that I don't necessarily agree or that I see different, like doing them, seeing like, I think actually she didn't mean this through this moment. I think maybe she was thinking of this. And yeah, and it's crazy. Just now rehearsing, I was like, I think I've been doing this wrong. All these years. I think it's not this, it's a little bit more to the right. And then it's a different feeling in the body. It's crazy. And maybe this, I agree with you that the fact that we didn't see or meet the Hoya, there's this freedom that is not that we're going to do whatever with these dances, but like trying. There's this thing for me that's very also special. Like the more I try to get close to them, and I guess it's the same with you, the more we are visible as dancers. I mean, inevitably. And I really like this, like being very rigorous and really trying to do them. And then necessarily our education, our time, everything, our values, they're there. We don't need to try to show them or use the Horace dances to show something else. It's there because,
No,
and
that's,
yeah.
no, that's what you also talked about the other time, that you quoted a French dance maker, that we find our own dances by going through other people's dances, which kind of speaks about a similar phenomenon, that it also makes our dances more visible. And I found that when you said it the first time, I found that very, well, also again touching, and it made a lot of sense, because it's like, small children, when they learn to walk, they kind of go through the walks of their caretakers and their big siblings, maybe, or people who are around them, and then they find their own walk. And this is another really interesting aspect of all the reconstruction work in dance is that you have to go through that paradox of being super precise. And when you talk about now that you're still finding things out, I'm like, yeah, it's great. It's great that we met. I'm very happy that, I did the work with you because you continue with it. And there's an understanding that the dances, they never stop, or dancing doesn't stop. It just continues, and it continues to evolve and change. I had a similar thing. My prime example always for what you just described about, whether it's this or this, how this is different. In hate, you have these hands, right, that do this. For a long time, I told you many times, I guess, I danced the dances like that. And then in one performance, I realized, oh no, wait, I have to have them like this. And then I suddenly felt hate. And I realized before I only felt anger. Just by locking the energy here or releasing it in the wrist. These little details, they are so rewarding when you find out about them, I find. And just one last thing, what I find so interesting in this context, I don't want to sit on the gender question, just one little thing, because you mentioned how Susanne Linke and other people talked about how Dore Hoyer was a very masculine dancer. Here we have an art form like dance that is so able to create all kinds of relationships and kind of connect things in so many oblique and weird and queer ways that, it seems so funny that the generation of Susanne Linke is still set on that one binary that our society is holding on to so strongly. It's like male and female. You're like, no, Dore Hoyer was Dore Hoyer. She did the dances in her interest and her desire and her, and yes, there was some masculinity, some femininity, but also a lot of other gender going on that, you don't even want to grasp, because that's the beauty of it, I find. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that at the time that Dore Hoyer did them, these questions were very present. Yeah, if we think of all the other dancers before her and expressionists, this question of gender was also present. And I think it's also connected to the fact that she was bisexual. And for me, this was a part of that was, when we go to the archive, there's the dances, there's the person. There was always a question for me, how much do I go to the person or not? And which aspects of the person you want to deal with or not. And I know that this is a part of Dore Hoyer that I wanted to also make visible, and that is then connected. For me, it was very special to also work with you, because you had worked with Waltraud Luley, which was in a relationship with Dore Hoyer. So somehow all these affects, talking about Afectos Humanos, were very present. And so when I did the piece, I was a lesbian, and for me it was very important to kind of honor also this part of Dore Hoyer's life. And so this was it makes me think of this thing I said last time about fiction, how we build our own fictions. And I feel that I have kind of the Dore Hoyer I relate. It's probably not the same you relate to, certainly not the same as Susanne Linke relates to. But I think they all exist, and maybe they all existed, and we're complex. We're very complex.
Yeah. Which kind of reminds me of a question that Berlin Dance Archive people also raised in the pre-talk that we had last week. The question around authorship, who is the author, who authored a dance, and how that relates to the dance archive, because dance archives, we both are talking about Dore Hoyer's dances, knowing very well that there were many influences to these dances that are not Dore Hoyer, that she picked up and imitated and tried out and played with. And we kind of started to imagine that the dance archive is organized differently than it is, because right now it's organized by authors, by people who created dances or who are the choreographers or who authored certain texts. I don't actually have any idea what that would look like, a dance archive that's not organized by authorship, but by relationship or by what you've just described, like many names. Dore Hoyer being like several layers, and then you have these layers that you can emphasize. But I found that an interesting little tangent, like how to imagine a dance archive that we are not going in to look for Dore Hoyer or Susanne Linke or Pol Pi or Martin Nachbar, but that we go in to look for human affects dances, which you can do. I mean, you have like the index nowadays, also with Google and the computers, it's more possible to imagine it. But that somehow, I don't know.
Don't necessarily have the relationships. I think if you search for Afectos Humanos, you don't necessarily have, okay, this person was in dialogue with this person, met this other person during the process, that this person, like today I was remembering that when I was learning what Begierde, desire, I took some flamenco classes with this teacher because I was very interested in like, okay, clearly there's flamenco. And it was like, wow, it was crazy because there were some like basic exercises of warming up that were like in Liebe, actually. It was the same. I was like, what? It was very, yeah. But then I thought, okay, so this person whose name I already forgot even was also part, actually, is still also part of this, how these encounters, it would be beautiful to be able to, think how to bring this that always stays invisible, and it's always the author and the we still are think in boxes.
Yeah, we need, exactly, boxes. This is like the archival boxes. You go like, when I was a kid, to go to the library meant you opened up these drawers with like lots of file cards, and you looked through the file cards to find the book that you were looking for. We would have to draw a lot of maps, no? And actually, like they pop up when you go for a name, and then you have that map that pops up. And I think Jochen Roller. Yeah, oh God.
You're like, what is this doing here?
Jochen Roller did a project. He did a reconstruction of Bodenwieser dances, who worked in Australia, and he has a website. I don't remember the name, but that does a little bit this. Which I found quite beautiful when he came out with it.
I just wanted to quote the person that said this sentence. It's Loïc Touzet, French choreographer, and I don't know if because I try to search, and I don't think he said exactly this, but he works a lot with this, and it's not in the context of historical dances, but this question of how do you find your own dance through other people's dances. I would even say through other dances of even non-human beings, but that becomes very concrete. I think when you work with archive, it's very, very concrete. This thing of like, okay, how do you search for your? It's not even. I think it's not even searching because it comes to you. This is what I think it's interesting. Working on somebody else's dances, you are faced with yourself all the time and with your history, your way of moving, because there was a gap and a difference. I don't even have to look for it. You just experience it.
No, exactly. It's nice how you say it. It comes to you. Also, like, it's a coincidence to run into Dore Hoyer. It was for both of us kind of, maybe it's fate, we don't know, but like it's kind of, you become a bit of a vessel, not an empty vessel, but where stuff passes through and you let it out again. Which also, I think that you are, as a trained musician, you're very trained at that attitude, where you open up to a score without forgetting yourself. That sort of dialogue is it's very specific to music. I think you have it also in dance and in acting, but there's something that I appreciated also in our work together. That you were so precise, all on your own. Like when I worked in study contexts with students, I had to like push them into being precise, with details and stuff, so they would find out their own dance, as we've just discussed. But you just did it, and that was great.
Mm. But this, I think we're maybe running out of time, but something I wanted to say is that I think when I started working with you, I did not expect at all that you would say so much things about the dances. I was very surprised. Because it was a lot of details. I thought it would be much not easier, but like, okay, this. And it was like never ending. And then when you talk about Luley, I have the feeling that, I mean, it also comes from there, but it was very interesting as a process. And I think this is also, I mean, I am obsessed by details in general, but the fact that you work like this too, it opened up this thing of still searching today and realizing how a tiny, like you said, this is also a big question for me in Haas, like find that, and it's totally different. It's crazy. And I really wanted to thank you, yeah, for that, because it really opened up at the same time very concrete imagery and like details, but physical, but also of projection of thinking like maybe there's when she does this, actually there's something underneath her, or there's something coming behind her, and to always be in these two dimensions of the images that might come with or not, and the physical. So this, yeah, really helps me to continue to feed the dances. I think I will maybe stop doing them if I cannot be searching. But I think I will always, maybe I would be just physically not capable of doing them anymore. But there's this thing of, because I think I will never do them as they really, really, really should be. And I always have to get better and search and try. And that this is why I think it's nice to keep on searching them while you're dancing, like how to search for it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, it was a pleasure to work with you also, I have to say. Thank you. Maybe that's a good ending.
Yeah.
It just continues, and we are grateful for the work.
Yeah. Thank you, Dore Hoyer.